we believe that we lack today 5 million developers, and we will lack 8 million developers by 2030. So that's worldwide, that's a lot. So now a lot of APIs are published in a way that's it's to be used by non-developers or no coders, as we say, right?
I'm Jason Harmon, and this is API Intersection, where you'll get insights from experienced API practitioners to learn best practices on things like API design, governance, identity, auth, versioning, and more. Welcome back to API Intersection. As always, I'm your host, Jason Harmon, CTO at Stoplight. Yet another old friend from the API world today, a fellow that I've spent time with in I can't tell you how many cities around the world, in large part because he created a way for us to travel around the world in the name of API Days. So today's guest is Mehdi. And Mehdi, I'm not going to say your last name. I never do because it's hard for me to say. So you say it and tell us a little bit about yourself.
Hello, Jason. Yes, my name is Mehdi Medjaoui. I'm indeed founder and chairman of APIDays conferences, 10 conferences a year in 10 different countries to spread the API mindset on the business and technical level and connect the humans behind APIs. So if you've never heard about API Days, you can take a look. But yes, so this is where I met you, Jason, and a lot of people in the API space. Always a great moment to share about what's new, what's still best practice, what people are doing on innovatively on APIs and API mindset.
Cool. Well, you've done that forever. So what are you up to these days besides API Days?
So beside API Days, I'm currently CEO of Olymp. So Olymp, it's assistant AI for data protection that delivers an API for enabling lawyers or startup CEOs or C-levels to integrate, legal capabilities and data protection into their systems.
Right on. This guy's an intro king. I think you win for brevity and accuracy. I love it. So, thinking about what should we talk about for me was pretty easy when I sat down this morning to plan for the show. You're a guy that's been all over the world, talked to people in every culture and region, and you do it on a regular basis. So, my thought was let's kind of go through like where you see trends. I know you guys have done a lot of work in the past on like building landscape maps and things like that too. So I guess, what do you think in the last year or so is kind of the biggest trend coming around in APIs?
So really last year, so if you ask me the last year main trend on APIs, I would divide it into two parts. The security aspect has been really important. Post-COVID, so many companies have opened endpoint. Like not even monitoring. It was just business critical to go digital, and so they have opened these shadow APIs all over the place, and they don't know actually where it's their attack surface. Where are they? So API security has been really an important topic. So really, the last 18 months, we've seen many companies raising a lot of money, and company really interested on the topic. So it has been really important. Besides that, I also add the privacy regulation aspect, because security and privacy quite work together. So some companies are trying to also adopt privacy regulation checks when they do security checks on their APIs. So now they don't verify only the security aspect, the broken object level authorization and stuff like that, but they also check if this is a personal information. Is it a sensitive information? Is it allowed to go in that country? So they do more verification on privacy and when they do on security level. So that's really one important trend we've seen. The second trend, there are many trends, but let's say I try to put them by order of importance, is the final maturity of event-driven architecture. We've talked a lot about that in the last 5-6 years, but now company really at the conference, they go at the event-driven architecture track. The async API specification talks are highly attended, and company now are pushed hardly by the business to go for real time, for faster application, faster response. And so classic REST polling APIs are CRUD the style are begins to be obsolete for that use case. So the use case is driving the adoption of event-driven architecture, even if sometimes people don't know why they need it, but they have heard about it, so they're interested about it. But it's like microservices like 7 years ago, or GraphQL 6 years ago, or whatever. Like, it's the hype and the use case in the same time. So people will understand that the use case is driving the adoption of a technology and not the opposite. So that's really two important trends that we've seen over the last 18 months.
Yeah, I think this is going to be true across all the things that we talk about. That when the hype kicks in, you always have to remind yourself that let's see what this is good at, right? And I think we've seen that with like GraphQL. Like, we're going to make all of our architecture in GraphQL, and like bad things can happen. Or now it's like everything should be an event, and it's like, oh, good luck tracing, right? Like, so hype comes and goes, but I think that's the other bit I'd love to do here is just drill down a step into what do we see that's kind of working so far, or to your point, what problem is this likely to solve in this space? So backing up to the security thing a little bit, just because I think this one it's big. I've spent a lot of time looking and talking to people, and I guess the big question for me is like, within kind of the traditional technology security world, like, do folks get it yet?
So you're right, but let's also celebrate the fact that API management has become a commodity. Over from
Mm-hmm.
the
So
2005.
it's funny that you mentioned this, because just yesterday there was, and I know by the time this airs, it'll have been a few months back, but had a bit of a, there's been some back and forth with Mark O'Neill at Gartner saying it's not API management that's the commodity, it's the gateways. And I actually think he might be right on that. And it's that I think there's a redefinition of what API management means now that
Yeah.
goes well beyond just the gateway.
So yeah, this is exactly my point. The fact that I want to celebrate, let's say, API management is dead, long live API management, because the first era of API management was just like putting gateways, enforcing control at the gateway level, using it at the path through to know what should go out or not. Now it's over. We did it. It works. Congrats, right? Congrats to all these companies. I remember, Sonoa Systems, the old name of Apigee, and like this SOS software at the time, and the Mastery and other like that, right? Okay, congrats, guys, you made it, right? So that thank you. But the thing is, now we have the second level of API management, which is the deeper version, where actually there is now a full life cycle. It's not just a gateway. There is the practice. There is from the strategy, the design, the development, documentation, the governance, the monitoring, the promotion, the deployment, the development, the testing. Like so many other things that have been added. Just I think a gateway, and so yeah, I just wanted to celebrate that because security was part of that gateway idea. The gateway was there also there for security. But we've seen two realms fighting with each other. We have the identity and access management realm, that was owned by other people from the CISO, Chief Information Security Officers, and the API management world were mostly on CIO world, right? And so now on the security aspect, they begin to collide, right? There is some collision, and yes, and sometimes some companies don't know what they do. Is it still IAM or is it API management just done the right way? And so this debate is not over, and there is quite some tension there. But maybe what may solve it is the DevSecOps approach, like putting security into the DevOps and CI/CD pipeline. So shifting left security, as we say. So that makes the API management world winning a little bit more. But there's also the shield right aspect. The shield right on, be sure of your surface attacks and how you protect these, which still on the IAM and security world. So shift left, shield right, two vision of security around APIs that are fighting each other, but they will be merging in the next years for sure.
Yeah, it's interesting because I've heard this notion that, like, DevSecOps is a shift left, and maybe it's because, I'm a design guy, but to me it's like, if you're doing it at the ops level, it's like a just in time before runtime, right? Like it's at the absolute last minute, so it's just barely left. To me, it's like there's also, I think, getting your API design right so that you're specifying security in a consistent way. I look to folks like 42 Crunch and that sort of thing as like, I think where the real shift left is at. But I agree with you too that like this is definitely a belt and suspenders kind of topic, right? You've got to have good design, but you got to make sure that it actually works when it goes out the door. So I see that merge coming too.
Yeah, in the book, Continuous API Management, that I co-authored, with Mike Munson, Eric Wilde, and Ronnie Mitra, we have the 10 pillars of API management. And one of the first pillar is the API design. But we say that in this design phase is not just the interface design. It's not just the path, the methods, the resource design. It's also you need to also to design the performance at this level. You need also to design the security at this stage, right? And you may go further into later stage like publishing whatever, and maybe be back on the design when you see things are wrong. But shifting left is always a good idea. It comes from Toyota actually, right? It comes from Toyota lean manufacturing. Like every defect should be detect early as
Yep.
possible in the production process. So it just comes from there. But now, how do we do it with APIs and shipping software in production and publishing APIs in production? So that's this idea. But we put too much on the developer shoulders. So now we have the DevOps. So we need the developer needs to code in a way it's already shippable. Now it needs to be secured. We baptize the term DevRegOps, so checking privacy regulation at the dev level. That will be too much just for the developer. Just a developer just want to ship code that works. Why we put so much responsibility on his or her shoulders?
Yeah.
Because it's not the right
Yeah. Very
place.
true. Well, and I think this is also, and I guess this is a sidetrack, but we see this kind of more inclusive process around that API design that you're, kind of referring to. That there's a lot of other things to consider besides, what's the basic interface going to be. But before I go down the rabbit trail too far, I guess the other perspective I had on the security stuff is, I think kind of the security world moved out of this like secure the network boundary as the only way for a long time, and kind of resisted that change, and then took a step further into kind of how does actually cloud work, and how do applications work a bit more. But I feel like some of these things are getting down into really the nitty gritty of how these APIs work. And to your earlier point, there's a proliferation of ways they work, and I feel like there is a layer in which the traditional security world is just going to have tools that give them a green light, because I can't imagine that those folks are gonna really understand the impact of those things. But curious to hear what you think.
No, you're right. There's a great book that, in fact, it's not a great book by itself, but it's great by the idea he provides. It's called Total Resistance. Actually, it's a war manual from Switzerland, like a soldier. So Switzerland is quite neutral in many conflicts, but he called a book Total Resistance, and he say a nation will never surrender because they failed, they are occupied or whatever, if everyone in the population is still resisting at any time. So it gives some ideas like, if you're, for example, a waiter at a restaurant owned by an occupant, like just break some plates sometimes, be slower, be like, kill the whole machine by every bolt and every nut, right? So like if like everything, you should participate to the movement of resistance. It's called total resistance. And I think security is like these topics like evangelism and others. But as an organization, you need to make everyone aware of the challenges, the fights that the organization face. And security is an important challenge. And so the shifting left idea is that, yeah, it's not the realm of just the CISO in his ivory tower, just securing the network because he's in this castle and he just have high barrier. But when they're in the barrier, okay, it's over. You let people in, it's completely over. And also, this barrier kills also the ability to innovate with partners, with ecosystems. To be open and finally embrace, the real idea of the API economy. And this is why it didn't work in the past. Also, security people were too concerned about working with others, and they were shutting down the potential business, right? So if you have this total resistance idea, you can shift left to everyone, so everyone is aware, everyone is an evangelist of what the company does. Like Xerox was saying in the 80s, everyone is a sales. Nobody's answering the phone. You're just the groom. You listen to the phone, you take the notes. It may be a lead for the company later. So security is now like this. Everybody should be aware about, like, what are we doing something, which goes in the security level we want. But if it's decentralized at every people level in the mind share, in the global mind share, yes, you finally have the reward of being open, but also the security. You have 1 million words, right, into the company that actually think about it, right? And it's more mindset than just the technology security, right? I've seen many companies with code reviews, for example. So more people talking about it. That's already something, because you don't let things go out in the wild.
Yeah, great points. I guess privacy was the other side of this coin that you mentioned, and having been in some higher compliance oriented industries before, things like fintech and travel, like when you're in those industries, that's obvious, but it seems like there's a broader awareness now with things like GDPR, SOC 2, some of the ISO stuff internationally, that's increasingly becoming a requirement to sell a product, right? That it's sort of like starting to apply to everyone and not just those high compliance industries. So that's my sense of it, but I'm curious to see if you have more than that.
No, you're right. And actually, this regulation like SOC 2, or for example, ISO 27001, are virals. Is that if you want to keep your ISO 27001, you need to work with companies who have also the same certification. So it goes viral, and so it's leveling up by virality, and by the fact that top players and top customers oblige their suppliers to also be on that way. But there is, again, it's like security, or it's like everything. Do you do that for the practice and for the long term culture, or do you just that for the certification? So if we go back to the culture that gives you the certification and the potential reward beyond that, yeah, it's true that now, actually, privacy regulation are extraterritorial. So if you want to, GDPR applies even outside of Europe. If it's a European citizen, right? Or CCPA in California applies outside California. ColoPA Colorado apply outside Colorado, and so all these regulations compete, and you have to respect them all at once as an organization. So now you need to check if it's a personal information, sensitive information, the nationality of the user, where the request is done, on which territory it's done, for what type of use case, what's the legal base, so many things that developers don't care. Only the lawyers and data protection officer care. And there's a huge gap there. And we need to fill that gap. And the gateway can be one solution with something I call privacy gateways, but you can check actually the destination of the data, and one application can have an access to a database, data in a database via an API, right? But for different purposes, they will or they will not be allowed to do so. And so if you understand now the purpose of which is an obligation by regulation, so the purpose of, or where the data will be used, if the consent is valid, or what we call the legal base, then you begin to have also a better view about, like, respect of the user, respect of the regulation, but also a better understanding about how your IT system work, right? So there are new terms coming, like a purpose-based access management. It's not just access level management, but purpose-based access management. There are many on your new terms. Again, it's nascent, so no few people are aware, but it's coming. It's coming. We will add more control at every layer of software, and especially the API layer, internally on the gateway level, and externally on the of course at the gateway level, but also on the developer portal and stuff like that. So yeah, privacy is coming, and you learn about it before you hear about it.
Yeah, it's very true that like I've spent a bunch of time in our team at Stoplight kind of indexing these spaces a little bit to understand, who are the players, and man, it is frothy. Like there are so many relatively young startups growing really fast, uh, but also like no clear leader at this point. So it is absolutely just a pony race of innovation going on. And I agree, man. The next couple of years, I hope, because the problem, let's be real, to be solved here is that all of our data is at risk. We all have skin in this game. And so, like, improving the security and privacy factor, I think, is great because it's a selfish problem for all of us. I mean, how many times have we had our data, compromised and stuff? So there's a ray of hope here, a ray of hope coming.
No, you're right, but I would say knowing this industry, so many money has been, so many entrepreneurs wants to build the product they want for the industry, but it's not yet the product the industry wants. So there is still a gap
Yeah.
between what entrepreneurs wants to do, like level up the level of ethics, on the in the industry, but the industry is not ready yet because the end users are not demanding it enough. Of course, we all demand it for ourselves a little bit, but really few people change provider because their data was not enough respected, their consent was not enough respected. So unless there is also this end user and customer pressure on social media platforms, on retailers, on banks, or whatever, then these actors will have issues to be successful selling privacy solutions. Because if it's just a regulation that company wants to respect, they will just spend the least possible. They will just spend the least possible to get the certification, and not the culture and not the practice. So it's our
Yeah.
responsibility as individuals and citizens to put pressure.
Yeah, I suppose on a long enough timeline, everyone has an embarrassing breach that makes them come to the table and ready to spend some money. But maybe we're not quite there yet. But yeah, I think that's the problem we've seen in that space too. Is like everybody's coming up with great ideas, but how do you like in the traditional business world, right? It's like how does that make me more money? It's like, well, it's not exactly like that. You're preventing losing a bunch of money, which is a hell of a lot harder thing to sell.
Yeah,
So
a French king used to say, I think it's Louis the 14th, prime minister, but used to say, uh, "Give me 6 lines written by the hand of a honest man, but I will find something to make him imprisoned." You know, so like we will always have something to that can go against us, whatever it is. So yeah, privacy is important, but we need to care about it.
So I guess back to kind of the other thing that you touched on, it was event-driven architecture, and what really has seemed to have been quite the buzz in the last year. And personally, I'm a little confused by it all in some ways because it's like I feel like that was the big thing 10, 15 years ago. And like I thought that was all settled, and I thought everybody was doing that stuff already. But then all of a sudden, it seems like a big new wave of interest. And I mean, like async API and all that. I mean, like we work with those folks where like Spectral is embedded in part of it. Like I see that having a spec format is cool, but like, why is this suddenly a big thing that everybody wants to know more about in your eyes?
So there are a few ways. So first, I don't know, you remember probably the XKCD drawing, about software trends, architecture trends. They just come every 20 years. But they come with a new fashion. And actually, what happens is that a new set of technologies created with a new mindset, new business mindset, let's say, remind us that 20 years ago we were doing things that were not so bad and that were smart, but with this new technology they are even more possible than before. And so the trends come back, and so it's about centralization, decentralization, centralization, decentralization, right? Monolith microservice, right? It will be like, so it was synchronous, asynchronous, synchronous, asynchronous, and these trends go over and over. But let's also remind that sometimes new technology enable this to happen. Like Docker has been, for example, like REST JSON, so SOAP XML and all these WS star whatever security stuff was not enabling the true API mindset, to be open really and to accomplish the SOA governance, it was the SOA governance is still this idea of being able to have services open and composable, but the technology at the time couldn't do it. So finally, we find new technologies to make it happen more. So it comes back. So it always goes like that. Always goes like that. New technologies enable old mindsets to finally be real, and to continue, right? But so the event-driven architecture is just following that. It's just following that pattern. We were doing it 15 years ago, 35 years ago, asynchronous communication. But also the network have improved a lot. The infrastructure have improved a lot. But also the business is a lot more involved into let's say end user demands, and so the need of real time. Now we have also a lot more client applications, desktop, mobile, third party, whatever. So now being sure that the resources that are demanded are demanded by the person that really want them. So that's important. So, but it's because of that. It's because of that now we've seen some classic CRUD REST style APIs, like facing some issues or some difficulties of performance, because actually we were not able to say, okay, maybe we send too much to too many people, right? And we don't know actually if they need it, and so we have to send things there when we don't know. So it's because of, again, this particular business mindset, technological advancement, and breakthrough that finally it becomes possible. Like a lightweight proxy or reverse proxy like Nginx, made this happen too. I've seen, like, by the order, they talk in microseconds. I've seen demos of Nginx. They don't talk even in milliseconds. They talk about microseconds for a request. I don't know for what use case it makes
Real
sense.
time, real
Yeah,
time.
yeah, real time, real
Well,
time.
but in this event-driven architecture resurgence, what is that new technology that's suddenly resparked all of this in your mind?
I would not say it's a new, again, it's, as I say, it's not directly a new technology making it happen. It's not directly a new technology. It's the evolution of infrastructure performance, the network bandwidth,
Yeah,
and the business mindset. I think it's just this mixture, nothing new, but it's mixture, and also the async API specification that at least maybe just sparkled, just up, let the fire up, say, okay, oh, we have a specification, we can align all of this. Finally, we can have a contract driven, let's say, development. We can have a single source of truth for all this stuff, and it's maybe just
yep,
that's what lit the fire.
yeah, yeah, maybe so.
And just for the
All right.
it's not a joke, but just for the story, I was talking about what real time, some architect at a large social media told me, what's real time, what's how many seconds is real time, and I say, okay, like 100 milliseconds. Say less than that. Say, okay, 10 milliseconds less, 1 millisecond less, like 100 microseconds. Say less. And I say zero, like, he told me less. Say what, like, and actually say yes, actually. No, because they provision the potential action in the app. So in case that it's offline, they can still continue the next action. They provision the next moves, potential moves. So actually, say we are below zero. We anticipate all the potential actions of the user. So we can have like one or two actions away, like chess players, right? When they anticipate the moves, but they anticipate the next action. So if there is a network delay, they can still continue to catch up the network when the user is still using the app. So again, it's not physically real time, but on the user level, it's below zero. And I found out, wow, that's scary. And this is what I was saying before. The use case has been driven by the business, has been more important than ever, and I think that's really what driving event-driven architecture.
Yeah, I'm going to be honest, Mehdi. This sounds like one of those San Francisco discussions that goes beyond the scientist in me that says the speed of light says we can't go real time. That's okay.
Yeah, we're a podcast to tell side stories of the industry. So let's do that.
Yeah, totally. All right. So, what else do you think? That was, I think, kind of a top 2.5, right? If we consider security and privacy really are different things, but part of a similar trend, event-driven architecture. We already kind of touched on how API management's changing. What else do you think is kind of a big thing that's coming?
Yes, so there are two trends which are consequences of the previous trends we talked about. We talk about commoditization of API gateways, and so because of that, we have now specialization of specific API management solution for dedicated industries like banking, insurance, supply chain, government, where the vendors begins to include of course the gateway, the specialized gateway, but the regulation, the respective regulation, the right security levels, the right practice, the right standards in the design tools. So really, we have this specialization now because of the previous commoditization into industry-specific solutions. So that's really one trend. Pushed by regulations, because some regulation also obliged to open APIs, in healthcare, in banking, and others. The other trend we see that is a consequence of what we're talking about, that we have too many things on the developer, and why we put DevOps like infrastructure concern on the developer shoulders, security concern on the developer shoulders with DevSecOps, and we put more and more stuff on the developer shoulders because we don't have enough developers. It's just because we don't have enough developers, so we put so many things on top of them as responsibility because they are the heart of the software production. And because we don't have enough developers, now we try to have more non-developers, but still be involved into building code or building applications, which is the no-code aspect or low-code, no-code trends, which is actually quite huge. We believe that we lack today 5 million developers, and we will lack 8 million developers by 2030. So that's worldwide. That's a lot. So now a lot of APIs are published in a way that's it's to be used by non-developers or no coders, as as we say, right? And now you can see now you have like boot camps of no code. So you used to have boot camps of code, how to learn, I don't know, React in 3 months, whatever. Even if you don't know about anything about software programming, but now in the same time you learn to no code or I don't know how to say that, how to learn to
You
know.
learn how to not code. I love it.
You learn how to not code. But no, like the Notion, the Airtable, you can replicate the whole. Let's say with the no code stack, you can replicate the whole business behavior of an application. That can go few $100,000 or few $1 million of revenues without finally making it with real code when developers' time and availability will be there. And so now we see lots and lots of that, lots of orchestration tools, again, with the same that we had 10 years ago and that we had 25 years ago with WebSphere, IBM, and stuff like that. But now revived into more SaaS and fancy tools. It's still highly fragmented, but but the business wanted to be the business had did shadow IT for the last forever. He always did shadow IT. They didn't want to talk to the IT people because they were already always saying no. At some point, they had too much on their shoulders. Now they finally have a self-service approach where they can do something mindful for the business that the tech will still be able to replicate later, but that at least good enough security, good enough governance, good enough whatever practice to actually to be not a blocker. So finally, the no code is enabling the business to stop calling IT a blocker, and finally is able to do something waiting for IT resources to be available and reactive. So the no code is really big. This is why APG acquired AppSheet a few years ago, and all the industry has now a kind of a no code aspect to onboard. And I still believe that for API management tools or API design tools, the business owner needs a role, needs a place, needs to be in the discussion and in the tools. You may have seen APIzer, for example. They did a tool. Gravity, I bought it from them, but they did a tool just for writing not so bad API descriptions or open API specifications for tech people, but by business people, right? Often, let's say, open API documents that IT teams still can respect. Let's call it like that. But yeah, so this is a huge trend of making non-tech people involved into APIs and involved into the production, the publishing, and the promotion of APIs.
Yeah, we've at Stoplight, we've definitely seen this kind of stuff. One, the rise of the API product manager in the last couple of years. We're seeing that title now all over the place in a way we haven't seen before. But I think more interesting is the non-technical API product manager. Traditionally, these would have been like your architects who just got roped into writing stories. I think now, like, we have customer stories of folks that are product managers who design APIs, don't have a technical background, and with enough of like using spectral and linting stuff to keep the guardrails there for them so they don't, they maintain consistency, that they're able to design APIs without engineering help. So I agree that like in the API world, we're seeing it. I think one thing I wanted to call out for the broader no code kind of deal that you sort of said quickly, but I think is really important for folks to grasp is like, this is a good way to really almost have a prototype, MVP, whatever you want to call it, way of building things. But it is unlikely that you're going to scale a large business on something that doesn't have any hand-touched engineered code, right? So I do think it's revolutionary, especially for early stage startups. A world where, if you're an entrepreneur with a good idea, you can go build something relatively quick, get fast validation before you make the big investment in hand touch software. And I say all this because you meet so many developers that go like, well, it's all just going to be no code now. They're not going to need us anymore. I'm like, I don't think so.
Actually, the most productive people with no code tools are developers. Like the one who knows the code and he knows the shortcut and he knows what tools are great for and he knows where. So actually, a lot of no code tools actually are loved by developers because say, oh, it was boring to do that, or how many front end developers I know love Webflow and love these tools that enable them to do something really quick. Because they know how to trick it also and how to modify it when they do when it's wrong. So no, and again, when actually it reach limits, then you will go back to ask for real code and more degrees of liberty, more security and stuff. But again, I've seen some companies go for, as I said, from they did complete solopreneurs or like people who no tech guy or girl in the team at starting. That's great to start. You can make your first dozens of thousands revenue without a line of code. Just Google Zapier, great Google Sheet integration, Typeform. Like it works. You can do something focused on the value. There is a great saying which is there are some people who do technology with money, and there are some people who do money with technology, right? And so I think the no code enable these second kind of players to be a lot more free, to be a lot more free to try and do things. I would just argue that in the enterprise level, the no code has still some issues, and now we can of security governance, because business people don't know what is a scope. When they put data on Airtable, they put everything. They put everything, and when they allow an application to access to this Airtable database, they give a scope all. They give like, okay, you can access to everything. Wow, no, it doesn't work like that here. So now we see these new solutions to help manage security and governance and permissions on top of no-code tools. So we see a new software layer on top of no-code to allow business people to use no-code, but in the realm of IT. So no-code is not this shadow IT part. Yeah. Now no-code is being more and more included into the IT realm, into the IT boundaries. So now IT is applying the role to no-code tools.
Yeah, I like that you mentioned all this no-code stuff in the same breath as specialization. Like in the aggregator space of like, we have the one API to do all the things. I mean, I always tell people like that is a road littered with bodies. Lots of people have tried that and failed. But I think where we're seeing traction now is, as you said, kind of banking specific or healthcare specific, things like that. That's an interesting combination of, I have one way to go sort of access these capabilities without knowing all the different APIs quite as well, that I can use from no-code, low-code tools. I think there's a big power combo in there for sure. Well, look, Mehdi, I really appreciate you sharing kind of, everything you've seen from the road. And I know you're just a busy, chatty, social network building guy by nature. So thanks so much for sharing all this stuff with us. For listeners who kind of want to hear from you more, learn from you more, where can they find you?
You can find me on Twitter at Medjaoui, Medjawii. It's easier to pronounce for English natives, but not so easy. But at least I tried. I tried, and yeah, on my LinkedIn profile or on my different email address that you can find on my LinkedIn profile. You can reach me. Or at an API conference. I'm attending all of them. So, or any API conference I go.
Yeah, that is true. It's hard to miss you when you go to an API conference. Well, thanks again, man. Thanks for listening. If you have a question you want to ask, look in the description of whichever platform you're viewing or listening on, and there should be a link there so you can go submit a question, and we'll do our best to find out the right answer for you.
API Intersection podcast listeners are invited to sign up for Stoplight and save up to $650. Use the code INTERSECTION10 to get 10% off a new subscription to Stoplight Platform Starter or Pro. Take a look at this episode's description for more details.